Good afternoon, students, and welcome to the first edition of the Flipped Classroom. We're working on story elements in class today. A couple of things for you to remember when you're flipping the classroom. Make sure you have all the materials you need. Earbuds may be great too, and headphones. If you don't have your notes, you can use plain paper. No distractions. Give me my full 10 minutes. So if it's not working, shoot me an email. And if you don't have the internet, you wouldn't be watching this video. So welcome to the Flipped Classroom. We're beginning right now. Just a reminder of the main standard we're working on. It is RL 7.3. Analyze how particular elements of a story or drama interact. Our essential question is still, how do writers utilize story elements to provide greater insight and understanding of the text? What you will need. You are going to need the notes that we made in class today and yesterday. You're going to need a pencil or a pen, and you may need paper. Make sure you write your notes on this page inside the assigned sections, and I'll make sure to remind you when you are doing your notes. All right, here we go. So we're identifying the plot. And if you remember from the other day when we did our notes, plot is the sequence of events in a story. We're starting with the exposition, which is at the very beginning of the story. And just in case you're not sure where to write your notes, you are going to write your notes right here in this section. You're going to copy all the notes down for exposition. In the same section, you're going to be doing inciting incident too as well. So, exposition, you can see the symbol there. It is the beginning of the story, and usually in the beginning of the story we find out who the characters are, we find out the setting, and the basic conflict, what is really happening, what gets the story going. For the inciting incident, that happens in the exposition too as well. You are going to write these notes in the same section, but if you need more room, you can write in the flap. Now remember, you write it inside on the big triangle in that area that we've drawn off in class. But again, when you lift it up, there's extra paper. You can write on that flap that you lifted up if you've run out of room for inciting incident. So, inciting incident is the event that sets the story in motion, and it makes the rest of the story possible. Without this first little bit of conflict, then the story does not get rolling. You cannot move to rising action. Speaking of rising action, that's where we're headed next. So we're starting our notes for rising action. And remember, you can pause me at any time, fast forward, rewind me. So if you need time to catch up, don't worry about rushing. Pause. Okay? So with the rising action, we are writing it in the rising action section on the inside. We're copying all the notes. So rising action is the main part of the story. It moves the plot along, and it's where complications arise. You have that inciting incident and exposition that pushes you to the rising action. Well, you're going to have more little mini conflicts along the way that make things more complicated. I know you've said, I've heard someone say it's complicated. And in a good story, it definitely is. So that's rising action, short and sweet and to the point. Which moves us to the climax of the story. You are writing the notes for climax in the section right here. You're copying all the notes. I know it's a little small, so when you lift your tab out, right along that entire big triangle, and that'll give you a lot of room. So, the OMG moment of the story is the climax. It's the most exciting or intense part of the story. You hear it called the turning point. You hear it called the highest point in the story. This is when everything comes to a head. Maybe there was a big fight and they've been fighting a little bit, and it's time for the grand finale. So you know the climax of the story is the most exciting. This is when usually you do not want to put the book down. Like you're like, I've got to find out what happened. Honey, it's bedtime. I'm not going to bed. Well, you should go to bed. Your mother tells you, or your father tells you, or your grandma, whoever you live with tells you that it's time to go to bed. But you're at the climax of the story and you really want to know how it ends and what's going to happen, and don't interrupt me. And that's how you know you're at the climax. It is the most highest point of the story. It's where you get ready to find out how things are going to start to end. Okay? So with that in mind, once you reach the climax of the story, you start moving towards the finish. You're in following action. For following action, when we do our notes, we're going to write our notes in this section right here. We're still copying our notes on the inside. So, following action. Following action are the events that follow the climax, and they lead to, most of the time, the resolution. The conflicts start being resolved. The mini conflicts, and of course the main one, you start finding out, okay, what has happened afterwards. Then finally, you move to your resolution. And I do want to say the following action and a resolution tend to kind of blend together and go very, very fast. It is basically the end of the story. So with your resolution, when you're doing your notes for resolution, of course, you are writing in the very last section. And this last section is right here. And you're copying all notes on the inside of resolution. Resolution is the end of the story. Loose ends of the plot are tied up and remaining questions are answered and conflicts are resolved. Which begs the question, in every book, do you always have at the end every question answered? Probably not. And especially if you are reading something that leads to a sequel, because they want you to read the next story involved in the novel. So most of the time, loose ends are tied up and it ends in a nice little cute bow. But sometimes they want you to tune into the next book or turn into the next show. So the resolution solves one problem, but another problem tends to pop up. Well, guess what? That is the end of your notes. And of course, I know that you maybe have to pause or fast forward or rewind to make sure you got what you needed, but that's fine. Your homework is not finished though. There's an activity I want you to do. And basically the biggest hurdle is a story. It's a short story and it's divided for you already in the plot. It has the exposition section, the conflict, and it moves along to the resolution. Your job is to be familiar with the story when you come into my classroom the next day, which is Friday, because we are going to have a quiz on the biggest hurdle. But I'm not going to leave you hanging. I have put 2 games on this page for you to play after you read the story. And in these 2 games, you're going to see the same questions you're going to see on this quiz. So play Grade or No Grade and play Fling the Teacher. These 2 games are kind of fun. They're going to be a little difficult. If you miss a question, they'll make you start over. But guess what? That's kind of how you study. You'll start getting these questions right. And when you come in for the quiz, you'll already know the answer. Now, if you are having a lot of problems, go back to the story. When you read a question, go back, just scroll up and go back to the story. The story, you read the section that you need to read, find your answer, and then go back down to the game. The game will not exit out if you do that. So don't forget, if you're having problems, just like if you're reading a passage in class and doing a quiz in class, you read the quiz question and go back to the passage for your answer. You can scroll up and down, go from the game to the passage, and don't forget to zoom in. As always, if there's any issues or problems with the website, please send me an email or have your parents text me and I will answer you right back. So again, that is it. Don't forget, I'm going to decide right here. I'm going to zoom in for you so you can see. We are going to, I was going to zoom in. There we go. The biggest hurdle at the website, no spaces. www.rostelzone.com/thebiggesthurdle.html. Make sure you go directly to that site and you are going to play or read the biggest, there we go, the biggest hurdle. That's what it looks like. Okay, I just showed you the end. Just ignore the end though. And you're going to start with the exposition and then play those games with directions on the side for you. Okay? So, with that in mind, I would like to say to you, thank you for tuning into our first edition of the Flipped Classroom, courtesy of RostelZone.com, and I will definitely be seeing you again. Have a great evening. And again, text me, call me, text me for your parents, not call me, text me for your parents, email me for you if you need help in any way. Have a good evening, guys. Bye.